politics, protests, human rights, justice, equity, community. RaceAware.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of RaceAware, the podcast all about American race history and its overall impact on the lives of the marginalized. I'm Dr. Wilise Boucher, along with my co-hosts Tony Szynski and Dan Sauber. You don't want to miss any new episodes, so subscribe and follow RaceAware right now. Let's get started.
Today's podcast has to do with unions in America and their relevance to racial inequality and protection of the middle class in this country. Unions began forming in the mid-19th century in response to the social and economic impact of the Industrial Revolution. American labor unions benefited greatly from the New Deal policies of Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the 1930s. So let's go over a little back history. Who's actually started the unions in America?
I did.
You did?
I did.
You did? Well, I think Gompers would probably disagree. In the history of America's trade and labor unions, the most famous union remains the American Federation of Labor, the AFL, founded in 1886 by Samuel Gompers. Samuel Gompers was a British-born American cigar maker, labor union leader, and key figure in the American labor history. Gompers founded the American Federation of Labor and served as the organization's president from 1886 to 1894, and from 1895 until his death in 1924.
Wow.
In the United States, the first effective nationwide labor organization was the Knights of Labor in 1869, which began to grow after 1880. The Federation of Organized Trades and Labor Unions began in 1881 as a federation of different unions that did not directly enroll workers, which surprised me a little bit. Labor unions were created in order to help the workers with work-related difficulties, such as low pay, unsafe and unsanitary working conditions, long hours, and other situations. Sometimes they tried to change the conditions of the workers. Early strikes were rarely successful. That I know a little bit about because I was involved in several. The first was the National Labor Relations Act of 1935, commonly referred to as the Wagner Act, which guaranteed the basic rights of employees to organize into unions, collectively bargain for better working conditions, and take collective action. When we return, we'll discuss why the right is so opposed to unions and the connection to racism in America. As a union member for over 30 years, I saw time and time again the injustices that large manufacturing companies could have inflicted on its employees if it hadn't been for the presence of a strong union.
We love bringing you the RaceAware podcast content. If you like what you hear, find our podcast valuable, and want to help us keep creating our content, show your support by spreading the word and partnering with us on Patreon for as little as $2.99 a month by going to patreon.com/RaceAware. Partners of the show get access to exclusive benefits such as private access to the RaceAware community, the digital downloads, voter power, free access to the live RaceAware lounge, supporter shoutouts, best of all, free RaceAware merchandise, and so much more. Check us out at patreon.com and so much more. Check us out at patreon.com/RaceAware.
Welcome back. When you think of unions, you probably don't see the correlation with racism and the prevention of oppression. Union pressure can lead to vital legal protections from all forms of discrimination against workers and ensure safety in the workplace. While government agencies in charge of ensuring these protections now lack sufficient funds to do their jobs properly, many workers at least have a safety net from risks at work. Unions represent more than the white working class. Around 2/3, or 10.6 million, of unionized workers are women or people of color, according to the Economic Policy Institute. Unions even reduce safe workers are nearly 1.5 times more likely to have benefit plans than non-union counterparts, according to a report by the Center for Economic and Policy Research. For women, public sector workers earn 15% more, or about $6,500 Law Center.
That's a year?
Yes.
Wow.
I was really surprised by that.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Yeah. Unions are key to reducing income inequality. As unionization grew, so did household wages. Now, as unionization rates fall each year, wages fall for everyone except the rich. An International Monetary Fund study found the decline of union power explains the astronomical rise in the wealth of the top 1%. What a shock, right?
Mm. Well, I mean, it's not just one thing that causes a problem. It's multiple things that are happening in synchrony.
Right. And we talk about that 1% all the time. So here's one more step that they can use to get wealthier and more wealthy by trying to eliminate unions.
You mean that's one more step that they have used?
Right. And so
is left.
Right. When unionized workers benefit, so do their non-union peers. Union workers earn more in wages, around 13.2%, compared to non-unionized workers. Yet, non-union workers benefit from new labor protection unionization efforts, according to the EPI. Unions fought for 40-hour work weeks over a century ago and secured expanded health care for workers during the 1930s and the 1940s. So what exactly is the right-wing agenda? Here's a look at some of the groups in this movement. The American Legislative Exchange Council is notorious for being the network connecting corporations and lawmakers together in secrecy. The ALEC doesn't just push right-to-work bills, it promotes legislation prohibiting unions from using dues for political activities, stopping minimum wage hikes, and pushing privatization in states such as Michigan, Florida, and Maryland.
And what is right-to-work, Bill? It sounds like you have a right to work, but actually it's what, Tony?
It's the right to fire you for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's the right for you to get fired with no reason. They don't have to give you a reason. They just tell you thank you, don't come back.
Right.
And one of Alex's most famous thing that they do is they write a template or boilerplate policy, and they distribute it to all 50 legislatures so that the politicians can work on the exact same bill in all 50 states at the same time.
Unbelievable. They just think of everything.
Yeah, and it's interesting because by prohibiting the unions to use union dues for political activities, that really puts a damper on how much money to a particular candidate. And more often than not, unions are geared more towards Democrats.
What are we going to do?
Belongs to a union as Democrat, because I know for a fact that's not true. But For the most part, they are.
Well, it's a thing that has to be reformed.
Right. Yeah, if we even keep the unions. I mean, it's kind of sad.
I know. How many are left? Like 3?
I have no idea.
It's a small number compared to what it was at its height.
Right. Right. The state policy now itself as a group advocating for a country offering personal freedom, innovation, and opportunity. But yet, the state policy network, funded by the Koch brothers, often favors anti-worker policies such as right to work. In a 2016 fundraising letter, it listed a variety of reforms in states, including right to work, and told donors they have a once-in-a-lifetime chance to reverse the failed policies of the American left. I mean, talk about coercion at its best by the rich.
I'm really sick of getting those emails from both sides.
Yep.
Yeah, they just load up your email box with all these things, and half the time the right uses jargon to get people on the left to open up the email, in the subject line. And when you open it up, you're like, what is this,
Right.
And it seems to me we had our first big union busting back when Reagan was in power because he disbanded the air traffic controllers.
And that was a big union.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a powerful union.
Very much so. Well, another organization, the National Right to Work Foundation, as its name implies, is an advocate for the controversial right to work laws across the country. The organization's legal arm was behind Harris versus Quinn, which challenged Illinois unions from collecting fees from their non-union workers. The Supreme Court ruled against the union and ruled that requiring fees is against the First Amendment. Our good old First Amendment.
Wow.
Yeah. The Center for Individual Rights was one of the biggest boosters of the case, Friedrichs versus CTA, which would have had the same effect as Janus' case into a 4-4 deadlock. The CIR was backed up by other right-wing litigations, such as attempting to have race-based affirmative action in college admissions ruled unconstitutional. So again, we're seeing where racial inequality comes into this play.
Yeah, so when you really look at all of these things that you're bringing up, all these organizations, these organizations are actually the Jim Crow 2.0.
Right.
Okay, we're probably, it's just things that you don't know that's going on in the back rooms. Okay, this is all Jim Crow activity, all of it.
Definitely.
And when I say Jim Crow, a lot of people think that the minute you talk about race, it's only always about. People think that the minute you talk about race, it's only always about black people. It's not about black people. It's about everyone.
Across the board.
Right. It's across the board. No matter who you are, whether you're male, female, no matter what race that you are categorized in, anything that you are categorized in, anything that promotes justice and equality impacts everyone. Just like the union and non-union workers, the non-union workers benefited. And most of them probably benefited without even paying the dues.
Exactly. If there's any person to blame for Janus, it's the private equity billionaire, now again with a B, billionaire, and Illinois Governor Bruce Rauner. Rauner, a right-to-work zealot who called half of Chicago public school teachers illiterate, started the lawsuit, the case before the Supreme Court today. Meanwhile, his assault on workers in Illinois continues to try to stop organized labor by attacking pensions, keeping right to work, and more.
Mm-hmm.
Now, none of the above would have happened if it wasn't for the Koch brothers, Charles and David Koch. Two right-wing billionaires have funded anti-worker candidates such as Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. Even now, they are offering to support to destabilize public schools, promote charter schools, and weaken teachers' unions in states such as Arizona, Colorado, and are you ready for it? Florida.
That's a surprise.
Yeah.
I didn't think Florida would make that list.
Now, when we return from a short break, we will give our opinion on the subject of unions in America and do a little housekeeping. So stay tuned, please.
Hey, Stan, have you heard about that new podcast called...
I never miss it, Ryan.
But have you seen that they have merchandise?
No, I haven't. Is it nice?
Ah, it sure is. There's something for everyone.
Where did you find it?
I found it on patreon.com/RaceAware.
And what do they have?
Oh, my favorite's the stainless steel water bottle, but they've got clothing and other accessories and coffee mugs, too.
Do they have the clothing for men and women?
Yes, they do.
Oh, great. I can't wait to check it out.
I'm thinking it's great for birthdays and the upcoming holidays.
Good idea. I think I will.
Here, let's go there and check it out.
Sure, let's go. Welcome back. Welcome back. As a union member for over 30 years, I definitely have skin in this game. But what do you both think of what we just talked about?
Well, I think the first thing that caught my attention was the name Samuel Gompers. Gompers High School in New York City. I had no idea who the guy was, and today to find out, one, he founded basically unions, but even before him, I had no idea unions went back to like 1850. That was a surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was a surprise. I really didn't think far back.
Yeah, my first recollection was thinking about that, I think it was called the Triangle Fire in Chicago, where seamstresses and kids died in a really horrific blaze. I thought that was the start of the movement for better working conditions, child labor laws, that sort of thing. But
yeah, for me, I would think if somebody asked me, when do you think it started? I'd say like around the 1900s, like somewhere between 1900 and 1920. That's what I would say,
right.
Or maybe sometime after the Depression. That's way into the 1800s. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
I would never think.
Last time we thought suffragettes started around 1910 or 1908, and it turns out women were fighting for the right in the 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
Big misconceptions about unions, and I read this when I was doing my research, especially the opinions of the right wing, is that the unions basically protect the workers even if they do something wrong in the workplace, and that's just not true.
No, that's not true.
No, I was a union member.
No, that's not true.
No, I was a union member. I was under the UAW, United Auto Workers, for 30 years, one of the strongest unions in the United States. And yeah, we did have workers that tried to get away with stuff, and they were called out on it. But the only job of the union is to make sure that they get free and fair representation. Because without it, they could be fired and with no proof that they did anything wrong.
Right. So free and fair representation. And if it's something that you did wrong, to also make sure that the repercussions are not so extreme and unfair.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say, I was thinking back to a normal corporate remedial counseling or a talking down or whatever. You've got nobody there but yourself. And Florida is a right to work state, so they can just fire you for any reason.
Right.
At least the union rep is there to offer you some backup and protection.
And they also makes the corporation or the industry. That's basically why it's important. It's just representation. Nobody would want to have to go to court without a lawyer.
Right.
So when you get called into HR, that's the civil equivalent of being called to court.
Right. Yeah, pretty much.
Well, for me, I feel like
Pretty much.
Well, for me, I feel like unions are the backbone of the economy, and helping the middle class and the working class families receive their proper share of the country's economy. Okay, the economic growth is economy. Okay, the economic growth is happening. Only 1% shouldn't be getting 99% of that economic growth. It should be everybody's working. So why is only the 1% getting the majority of the economic growth personally? Personally.
Right. I think a big misconception too about unions is that you get pretty much anything your heart desires, and that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
We went out on strike for a lot of the things that we needed, just as for that, or we had wonderful medical benefits, but they didn't come free. We had to give up certain things to get those, and we had to go out on strike.
Right, so it's a negotiation. Right, there's negotiation. It's not like the union comes in and lays down the law. Right. There's a negotiation, representation of the employers, because they don't come to the table. Your CEO doesn't go to the table and start negotiating. They send their lawyers and their HR professionals in to do the negotiating.
But the CEOs in the past 20 years or so that got these enormous wage hikes only to retire a year later, which is something that happened to us when I was working. We had to fight for a cost of living raise, and yet here's a CEO getting millions of dollars in increased wage only to retire a year later. Right.
Well, they just wanted whatever goals he wanted to meet for his retirement. They just made sure that he met them.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
The other perception is that the union doesn't reward people that work hard. That you're rewarded just by virtue of your seniority. That's not true. The people with seniorities know how to do the job better than the new hires did.
Right, and it also prevented unions also prevent a certain level of nepotism.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, and in the plant where I worked, again, like you all probably know by now, I was raised in a small town in the Midwest. Our factory was very diverse. And
you mentioned that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there were plenty of times where people of color needed union representation.
Mm-hmm. I also think that bolder steps should be taken to the labor system. It needs to be able to build power for the workers to ensure that the rights that they have, that they actually do have rights on the job, and they also have the ability to collectively bargain, okay? Because that's essential. It's a living increase.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
Well, we also, and I know in future shows, we're going to be talking about the trans community. In our plant, we had a gentleman that went through that process like that, came back to work after the transition, and worked then for the protection of the union. It would have been a lot more difficult for her.
Yeah, probably wouldn't have ended up staying there.
Well, I don't know. She was pretty tough. I mean,
well,
I admire the heck out of her.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? I think that policymakers on the state level and on the federal level should really make rebuilding worker Power, their top priority. That's my last word. Their top priority. That's my last word.
Well, I just look at the news that's coming out of people who work for Amazon, that they literally are timed to the second and will be docked for taking even a bathroom break.
It's horrible.
They're trying to unionize within their work environment, and they've been very much against it. I wonder why. And yet they tout good benefits, a better starting wage, but still, if you become a robot, you've got 35 seconds to pee. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
The rules that they try to at least a month.
Wouldn't that be nice?
That would be perfect. And that goes for these rules at work, as well as people who are on food stamps. I remember I did an exercise with one of my classes, and we were doing a nutrition class. So I wanted to prove to them that no matter what the income level, we should be able to eat well nutritionally. And so I decided that we're going to use SNAP benefits as they're delegated to the different levels of income. And it was eye-opening for the class because they realized, number one, how little that people who are hunger dependent have to work with. Okay, and other people, I don't know what other people think. They probably think, first of all, you can only go grocery shopping with it. You can only buy food. You can't buy everything, every type of food. There's some restrictions. You can't buy...
Other restrictions. You cannot, for instance, if I went to Publix and bought a pound of roast beef, a loaf of bread, and a jar of mayonnaise, I could use my SNAP card for that.
Mm-hmm.
If I went to the deli counter and ordered a sub, because it's a pre-prepared meal, I could not use my SNAP benefits to purchase that because it's prepared.
Right.
I could buy a raw chicken.
Right.
I could buy a raw chicken, but I can't buy a cooked deli chicken.
Right. And that point that you just brought up brings me to have to say this. Most of the time, people who actually need something like SNAP to supplement their income so that they can feed their kids and feed them.
Yeah.
And now they have to buy things that are raw and find more time to cook.
Right.
And don't forget, too, a lot of people are living what they call food deserts.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Where there are no grocery stores. So you go to a convenience store, you're paying a higher price for a less quality food because you can't walk into, a convenience store and get lettuce, tomatoes, cucumbers, scallions, onions, whatever, and you're buying high sugar content food.
So are canned foods? So are canned foods considered prepared?
No, you can buy canned foods, but there are limits. There's certain ones. Most canned foods are eligible. Certain specialty items are not eligible, from what I understand.
Can you buy it like caviar?
I don't believe you can do that. And this is why I think people should just mind their own damn business.
Mm-hmm.
If you're given food stamps and a round figure, let's say, because you've got kids, you get $400 a month.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what you spend that money on because you're only getting X number of dollars.
Right.
Last year of a guy who went ballistic because the person behind him in line had a steak in the basket, and he saw they paid with a EBT card.
That's none of his business.
Buy a steak.
That's none of their business.
No, first off, it's none of their business. No, first off, it's none of their business. And two, what if it was their mother's birthday? Like poor people don't have the right to celebrate?
No, poor people don't have the right to live. It's like, remember that song?
Is his birthday or her birthday? I mean,
remember that song, Short People?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like so poor people got no reason to live. It's like, it's unbelievable. Just mind your own business.
Exactly.
And I think it's interesting what you said, Will, earlier was the people that really are the people that are already working several jobs and making things from raw, which now I'm going to sound like an old person, but back when I was a kid, we didn't get prepared foods. Everything was fixed from a raw state because it was cheaper. Raw state because it was cheaper. And that's the way a lot of these people who need the food stamps right now, that's the way they live for the most part. It's the ones that are kind of cheating the system that go off the rails a little bit.
And by the way, I do need to bring up the point again that when we talk about WIC, SNAP, those type of food assistance programs, when you look at the statistics, the percentage is not people of color. It's a lot of white people getting benefits. And yet, people focus on that damn person of color got a steak in their basket.
Well, the reason why we did this sidebar, it ended up being a little sidebar and it became a big sidebar, is simply because without unions, more people will probably need to be subsidized by government programs.
Right, exactly. Well, I was just unions disappear left and right. The only representation the middle class has right now is a union company. And we're losing those. And that so-called right to work is going to slip away from us eventually. Now, we also, at this point, first I'd like to thank everybody for listening and for my cohorts for just some incredible input. But we also have some housekeeping to do before we leave. Tony?
Well, don't forget we have our website, www.raceaware.rocks, ROCKS, and we now also have a special giveaway we're promoting, and that's raceaware.rocks/giveaway.
No, go ahead. You go ahead, Tony. It's your baby.
Pull it up. So if you got it handy, I don't have that one pulled up.
All right, so our giveaway is giving you guys, our fans and our fam, a chance to help us reach our subscriber goal across our platforms. So we're giving away 2 25 gift cards for each platform that's listed under the giveaway page every time we reach the subscriber goal for that platform. And this has a deadline because we want to try to reach this goal. It's a small goal by December 31st of this year. So check out the giveaway page, which Tony already told you is raceaware.rocks, that's ROCKS, that's ROCKS, /giveaways. And click on the giveaway icon and check out the details.
And I know we've posted it on Facebook, we've posted it on Twitter. We also have our YouTube account, our Instagram account, all called. I know, that's wonderful.
Yeah, that was exciting.
I love Cheryl.
I know. Now we're going to go into the I love Cheryl moment.
We love you, Cheryl.
And I want to thank all the people who have followed us blindly at first, but now and they're sticking with us. And we'd like to get more of you to join us and follow our content and definitely engage with us. You want to say goodbye, Dan?
Goodbye, Dan.
We want to thank you guys for spending this time with us on RaceAware. As always, if you found the podcast valuable, please subscribe, share, and leave us a comment. Let us know what you thought about it. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about next. Remember to visit our website. Our website is raceaware.rocks. Next time, stay safe, informed, and race aware, because truth matters.
We love bringing you the RaceAware podcast content. If you like what you hear, find our podcast valuable, and want to help us keep creating our content, show your support by spreading the word and partnering with us on Patreon for as little as $2.99 a month by going to patreon.com/RaceAware. Partners of the show get access to exclusive benefits such as private access to the RaceAware community, the digital downloads, voter power, free access to the live RaceAware lounge, supporter shoutouts, best of all, free RaceAware merchandise, and so much more. Check us out at patreon.com/RaceAware. Politics, human rights, justice, equity, community,